Turning toward the screen, I saw it display crowds of Imperial forces on the move. They were metallic vehicles whirring along as they ran on treads. They were tanks. My first thought was pure disbelief. Whoa, what are tanks doing there? Tanks in a world of knights. It had never even occurred to me. But the tanks were not the only surprise. They even had flying ships. It was hard to keep from shouting, "Are you kidding me?" Having the other side plot an invasion of our territory was scarier than I thought. It meant war on our own land. But I put up one rule in advance: no touching civilians. If you're excited to see Tempest face down a modern military, make sure to like this video, leave a comment with your battle predictions, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Now let's get into the war preparations. We found Gadora inside the labyrinth, alive and in fine shape despite every concern I had. Gadora looked like he had encountered nothing more dangerous than a stubbed toe. He let out a relieved laugh and said, "Phew, I thought I was a goner for a moment." Adelman's group was there with us. Ramirez and Veldora showed up later, but once they saw Gadora was okay, they left again. I asked him, "So what happened?" Gadora explained that he had gone to the Imperial Council and argued against the war, but he could not turn the tide. He had expected as much, so he tried one final appeal. He requested a direct meeting with Emperor Ludora, and the meeting had been accepted and scheduled for that day. Then, inside the Imperial Palace, he said someone stabbed him. That had happened less than 10 minutes earlier. That definitely was not all right. I felt guilty for asking him to go. Out loud, I said, "Oh, right. I gave you a resurrection bracelet." Gadora laughed again. Lady Ramirez's powers are truly amazing. They saved my life, in fact. I thought something like this might happen, so I set up a return spell in advance. Judging by how healthy and unstabbed he was, I figured it was something like that. Pretty smart idea. If he could instantly teleport himself back to the labyrinth, the resurrection bracelet would save his life no matter how badly he was hurt. Seeing a real-life example reminded me all over again just how effective Ramirez's abilities were. Still, Gadora was a pretty nimble guy himself. Setting up spells in advance like an alarm was not something just anyone could do. He had taught those tricks to Raisin as well, apparently, and I wanted to practice that later. I had hastened thought too, and combining it with that kind of delay spell could produce some even bigger results. I asked, "Who attacked you then?" There were not too many people in our nation who could kill Gadora. He was always on his guard, keeping up a pretty stiff magic defense. I did not think he would fail to spot a sneak attack in time, but Gadora said the assassin managed to avoid my detection before they struck, so I wasn't able to see exactly who it was. There is a suspect in my mind, but I must admit it's a rather hard to believe one. He showed me his back. There was a straight tear in his robe. His body was completely healed, but his clothing was still in the same condition. The tear was corroded in spots too, so it clearly was not just a physical attack. I murmured, "A single stab to the heart from behind, huh?" Diablo studied the damage and added,
"Your defenses were destroyed by magic, it would seem. Quite an interesting skill to use."
It had piqued Diablo's interest, and if so, this was no amateur assassin we were dealing with. I was sure the Empire had someone capable of killing me. Maybe it was Gadora's attacker even, but I ought to have assumed there was more than that. Gadora himself did not seem confident enough about his hunch to name a suspect, but he wanted to do some investigating, so I would leave that to him. I did not think he was lying, and he honestly seemed perplexed about the whole thing. I was not about to trust him immediately, but I figured I would wait and see what happened. I told him, "Well, I'm glad you're all right at least. It certainly shows us that the Empire shouldn't be trifled with. Let's all try to be a little more careful." Diablo agreed.
"You are exactly right, Sir Rimuru. No need to risk our necks further with them. I am sure there is little new information to find, regardless."
Gadora nearly died over the information he got from me, and I had to be satisfied with that. So after a few more kind words, I let him brief me on what he found. As the old man put it, the Empire was making concrete moves toward war. Whenever the Empire opened hostilities against another nation, they never bothered issuing a formal declaration of war. The Emperor was defined as the sole unique presence that mattered, and they did not even recognize the existence of other countries. That, of course, was lip service. They had diplomatic relations with the Dwarven Kingdom, for one, and they did not meddle in its sovereign territory. If the Empire decided to invade, it only did so after careful, prudent preparation. They did not declare war. They sent a letter advising the other side to surrender, and only once. If you followed it, fine. If not, as the stories went, the war was on, and they would no longer show any mercy. You really could not get much haughtier as a nation or more arrogant. If you are going to be such a bother, guys, do not expect to make any friends in international society, okay? Not that they participated in it anyway. They had not ratified any of the international law enacted by the Council of the West, so once they started a war, all bets were off. Post-defeat agreements, prisoner handling, prohibited actions during war. They followed none of those, which was part of why the Western nations feared the Empire so much. And yeah, I could see why. At this rate, they might try to justify the mass killing of civilians. If you lost in war against the Empire, that meant losing everything. I doubted the word reparations was in their vocabulary. Everything belonged to the Empire, so the losing nation would lose all their rights. If you wanted to reason with them, you had to at least fight them to a draw. We definitely could not let up now. We had to go in strong and cut out the root of all this evil. Now that we knew the Empire's direction, we switched gears into our own wartime proceedings. Our control center would now become a strategic headquarters. That was just a formality, really, but still an important one. Benimaru and Soe would be on standby there at all times, with Soe using his replications to fan across the region for spy operations. That way, we would not have to rely solely on our Argos network, and with Moss's assistance, he should be able to get some pretty accurate intelligence. At this point in time, we had a pretty decent advantage. Basically, in this world, war did not really begin until one army encountered the other. You could use scouts and long-range magic to try detecting enemy movements in advance, but conventional wisdom called for that only when the two sides were pretty close to bumping into each other anyway. The concept of information warfare was a thing here, but there was not another nation on this planet with an enemy monitoring program as thorough as ours. Hinata and Gadora both told me that too, so I was not imagining it. It was the golden truth. Gadora stared at the display, incredulous. This? Are we seeing this from the air? Diablo chuckled.
This is a product of Sir Rimuru's magic. It requires merely a minuscule amount of magicules to trigger magic from beyond the stratosphere. Only a small number of people could ever detect this magic in motion. One would need a danger prediction ability on the level of Ultra Instinct.
Gadora answered with open amazement. Yes, indeed. I'm fairly confident in my own magic detection skills, but this just seems so natural. I never imagined it was the work of any caster at all.
Precisely. Even an archdemon well-versed in magic would overlook such a low-level spell. Truly wonderful. Don't you agree?
Gadora agreed at once. I do. This magic is simply mind-boggling. Diablo, for some reason, was now bragging to Gadora with the smoogiest of grins. The old sorcerer was getting more and more excited as he concurred with each of Diablo's boasts. I called out, Shion?
Right away!
Diablo was going to be nothing but a distraction, so I ordered Shion to isolate him in another room. Now that things were quiet, we got to the business at hand. This high-altitude monitoring system was just beyond cheating. I mean, think about it. Until this moment, we had spent so much time fretting about which route they would attack from, but now that seemed like a joke. We had a full video feed of not only the most likely routes but our entire border with the Empire, so we would see everything from the moment they kicked off. It was like playing chess with a blindfolded opponent. They would only know where their pieces were, and unless you were a real beginner, you would not even lose to a professional. They were not just missing a couple of pieces, they were at a near total disadvantage. And of course, war has no rules anyway. If you win, you played it right. Having the other side plot an invasion of our territory was scarier than I thought. It meant war on our own land, with no previous agreements. But I put up one rule in advance. Out loud, I made it clear. No touching civilians. We, of course, would strictly prohibit ourselves from striking first. If we declared an end to hostilities, we would refrain from attacking any further. I trusted that nobody would go against this and break the rules. Now I had the cabinet of Tempest here in the control center. Benimaru was our commander, Hakuro our chief advisor. Rigurd was there, along with the heads of the 3 powers of government serving under him. Rugurd, Rigurd, and Rugurd. Shuna and Lilina led the female contingent. They were alongside Rigger, our top behind-the-scenes man, as well as Kaijin and Kurobi. I had Vester and Mulmul in there as consultants. Gobta and Gabiru had reported in as army generals, and Geld had taken time off from his work to show up as well. Finally, I had invited Testarossa and her 2 demoness friends. I let Diablo in too, figuring he had learned his lesson. He was standing amicably in his usual spot alongside Shion. I also decided to bring Gadora and Shinji's gang in as witnesses. A bit later, Masayuki, that font of morale for all of humanity, came in. Masayuki immediately objected. Wait a minute. Why am I the font of morale for anything? Can you stop spouting crap about me like that? Ugh. Oops. Guess I was airing my thoughts out loud again. Masayuki looked pretty huffy about it, and for some reason, Gadora was staring right at both of us. Maybe something caught his eye, but I would ask about it afterward. That left 2 more people to mention. Veldora and Ramirez, our support staff. Beretta, Trainee, and Cheris were also on standby in one corner. That was about all of them. Giving a few pets to Ranga on the ground next to me, I looked around at my seated audience. I addressed the room. I don't need to tell you all why you're here today. We're going to hold a conference to work out our opposition to the Empire. Benimaru and I have come up with an outline of our strategy, but I want to hear your feedback on it as well. Don't be afraid to speak up at any time. The room answered as one. Yes, Sir Rimuru. So the conference began. Turning toward the screen, I saw it display crowds of Imperial forces on the move. They were metallic vehicles whirring along as they ran on treads. They were tanks, and from what the image showed, there were around 2,000 of them. My first thought was pure disbelief. Whoa, what are tanks doing there? Flustered, I asked Shinji's group for some explanation. Through them, we learned that the Empire was using the knowledge and science of otherworlders to develop modern weaponry. They had internal combustion engines that ran on magicules instead of oil, charging up their energy through air circulation. That allowed for cooling and magicule supply at the same time. It was a pretty well thought out system in my opinion. These tanks were also pretty versatile. In terms of functionality, I would say they easily outclassed the best tanks in our old world. Gadora told us that the Empire had analyzed a magical control reactor found in some ancient ruins and reworked it for modern times. They were also building up a supply of magic stones for fuel, relying on the natural magicule supply for normal operation and the stones during battle. They could run at up to 65 miles an hour, and bad roads were no problem for them. They could even float a little above the ground, although it cost energy. Frankly, I felt we had fallen behind. If only we had worked on these. It frustrated me. Tanks in a world of knights. It had never even occurred to me. And I had trains and everything. I was one step away. But would you really develop tanks before cars? I did not think so. I mean, I would need to think things over carefully before I even put cars into the mix. They would be useful, but it was kind of like playing with fire. I was sure everybody would want one, but I did not think it would be possible to dole out one to each person. We could not tap our energy supply dry, so there was bound to be the haves and the have-nots. It was a better idea, I thought, to develop our city so you did not need cars. With trains, after all, things were already a lot more convenient. But maybe once our rail network was built out, I could develop luxury cars as a kind of hobbyist thing for the rich. Something you would want to strive to own someday. It would give people something to dream about, and I figured something high-end enough to be a status symbol would be all right. But that could wait until the war was over. After all, the tanks were not the only surprise. They even had flying ships. It was hard to keep from shouting, "Are you kidding me?" Those things would make transportation so much easier. If you used them in war, your supply problems were a thing of the past. If we could have taken air superiority for our own, I would have been a lot more optimistic. We need to develop those, I thought, but it just was not realistic yet. Flying airships were not something you could wrap up in a day. I think it was doable with enough time, but no development project ever went that smoothly. Every project took shape only with a trial and error process. On this point, I really had to applaud the Empire's research and development department, and hopefully nobody would chide me for thinking, boy, it would be nice if we could seize one of those intact. But, man, if only I had thought a bit more outside the box with my orders for things. Never mind, no point gnashing my teeth over it. But it was something for the future. Once this war was done with, I definitely wanted to start developing some more neat, innovative stuff. So we saw the current state of the Empire. I had been briefed on it in advance, but a lot of people in the control center were finding out for the first time. They gazed at the screen, mouths agape, not bothering to hide their surprise. I told everyone, the total size of the invasion force is estimated to be 1 million. I guess you can see that, but I think the Empire's military has been a surprise for us all. We still have the advantage in this conflict, so don't worry. The most important element of war was how well you could estimate the opponent's fighting power. On that point, we had pretty much stripped the enemy bare. Raphael told me that the total count was 1 million, and that was a crazy number to deploy, but I did not think it spelled doom for us. That was simply how much leeway we had to work with. I continued. Gadora has informed me that the Imperial military is composed of 3 major divisions. One of them is called the Armored Division, and that includes the tank force we see here. They call it the Magitank Force, and we can assume it's the main source of their power. I explained the inner workings of the Magitank Force to everyone, but that was not all of Gadora's information. He had participated in their strategy meetings for me, and he told me everything that was covered. The Empire knew Gadora had deserted by now, so there was a chance they changed their plans, but I was sure the main gist was the same. They had Yuki over there, after all, and Yuki was apparently angling to stage a coup of the Empire. I was sure he was encouraging the other division commanders not to worry about the surely dead Gadora. That ought to mess them up. Plus, as Gadora told me, the commander of the Armored Corps, a man named Caligulio, had taken the bait I laid out for him. He believed the dungeon was full of resources and treasure, and he wanted to seize it before anyone else could. If so, I was sure he would not want to change out the whole operation at this point, so chances were good that he would take up Yuki's suggestions. Working on assumptions is a dangerous move, but seeing how Caligulio ran his force, it would be easy to surmise what his army wanted. Once I wrapped up my rundown, Gobta was the first to speak. My force is stationed in the lodging town, but are they gonna be fighting those tank thingies? Very observant. For someone appointed a commander, this was a life or death question. Considering his long documented history of sleeping through meetings, Gobta was showing some real growth. Sometimes, a guy needs a little responsibility to show his true colors. Before I could answer, Benimaru gave him the news.
Isn't that obvious? The job of your 1st Army Corps is to smash up this tank force.
The shock made Gobta sway in his seat. Gobta muttered, "Nobody told me." Yeah, I get it. With a look of death already on his face, Gobta asked, So you mean we need to defend the town with our lives?" I smiled back at him and answered, "Of course not. Based on what I know about the tank's abilities, I think you guys could win if you took the right approach. But who knows how many losses you would take doing it. That and defending is always harder than attacking, and your green numbers without any battle experience are going to be pretty fat targets for them. So no, it's not a to-the-death thing." I was trying to calm him down. Hakuro, who I assigned to support Gobta, was nodding at this. He must have caught my drift. Gobta asked, "Okay, so what are we gonna do?" I said that is the job of a general to work out, but I shouldn't expect that from you first thing. Benimaru, if you could? Yes, I was lording it over him, but honestly, I was just as much a military amateur as Gobta. I did not know much about strategy, so I was leaving the nitty-gritty to Benimaru. But then I enjoyed making life easier for myself. If Gobta could work hard and mature for me, I would be able to kick back that much more. So, hoping Gobta would put in a diligent effort, I listened to Benimaru alongside him.
All right, Gobta. The lodging town's a vital base for us, but losing it wouldn't be a major concern. If they tear it down, we can rebuild it. If they capture it, we can take it back. The problem is the potential for civilian casualties, but Sir Rimuru has taken care of that. He's already sent out the order for everyone to evacuate to the capital of Rimuru.
The moment I knew the Empire was on the move, I had them begin the evacuation. It would take time, I was sure, but it ought to wrap up before the Empire arrived. Gobta remembered. Oh right, there weren't a lot of folks around there. Benimaru went on.
I'm sure there weren't. Your job is to help anyone left in there evacuate to safety. After that, you'll be heading here.
Benimaru pointed out a spot on the large map we had spread out on the conference table. It was the armed nation of Dwargon, and in particular its central city. Gobta blinked. Huh? Benimaru explained.
Look at this image. The Imperial force intends to split up and invade from several routes. Some of their units are already in the forest of Jura, but the tank force hasn't moved yet. Based on the direction of their advance, they're clearly following the foothills of the Kanat Mountains. It's not as thick with trees there, so the force won't get bogged down as much.
Gobta answered uncertainly. Okay. Benimaru said,
You don't get it, do you? Oh well. Anyway, your mission is to defend the Dwarven Kingdom.
As he spoke, Benimaru moved a peg representing Gobta's force into the Dwarven Kingdom. Then he took another one out, symbolizing the Dwarven armed forces, and placed it next to Gobta's. Benimaru said,
You'll be fighting together.
Gobta finally understood. Oh. His reaction was a mix of surprise and excitement. This was another operation inspired by Gadora's information, and Gazel had already given it his blessing. As per our agreement, I informed him that the Empire was aiming at the Dwarven Kingdom. As I promised him, I declared that we would send him backup. Gazel, to his credit, had picked up on the Empire's suspicious behavior. They had repeatedly asked for permission to march through. He was starting to get sick of constantly refusing them, but he could read between the lines. He knew they would lose their patience and get moving eventually. He welcomed my offer, and it would give us a lot of benefits as well. We could always rebuild the lodging town if it was destroyed. But as we saw it, the Empire would not go out of its way to pillage it if no fighting occurred there. If we could get it back soon enough, I saw no problem with abandoning it for now. Benimaru continued.
The Empire's traveling through such a conspicuous spot because they want to convince us they'll invade there. With this much of a show, anybody would notice it.
Gobta asked, Oh, so it's one of those show of force things? Damn Gobta. Grasping the fancy concepts and everything, he must have been studying a little bit. I was impressed. Benimaru said,
That's right. This route they're taking is on the border between Dwargon and Tempest. Both countries are going to notice them. It's a great way for them to gauge our moves. If it looks like we're going to meddle with them, they can use that as a pretext to start attacking. We're forbidden from striking first, of course, so we would start with a warning. Do you understand so far?
Gobta answered, Yep. Benimaru moved the discussion forward.
Now, if we don't make any moves, the Imperial force will cross the Great Ameld River and reach a point that overlooks the main entrance to the Dwarven Kingdom. That's a broad, grassy area without any trees, the perfect place to deploy an army.
Gobta said, Uh-huh. Benimaru continued.
Once they get that far, King Gazel's not going to stay silent. He'll face up to them with his own forces and try to negotiate. And it's the same way with us. The Emperor will make enemies out of us and the kingdom at that point.
Benimaru moved the pegs around the map to demonstrate.
Sir Gadora said that the Emperor's wary of being surrounded by the Dwarven and Tempestian armies, but as long as they cover this point, that can't happen. Even if the other side stages a sneak attack from here, it wouldn't mean anything tactically.
A surprise attack involves striking the enemy when its guard is down. If the enemy expects it the whole time, it is not only meaningless, but it can be harmful. Benimaru concluded.
And so instead of that, we'll assault them from the start. We'll go right up, and we'll smash them.
Benimaru tapped Gobta's peg against the Empire's. Gobta sounded impressed. Oh. None of my other advisors seemed against it, but what did they think about our forces' size difference? Benimaru called out,
3rd Army Corps General Gabiru.
Sir!
Your role is to guard the evacuating residents. Watch from the skies for stragglers or people in trouble and help them out as needed.
Yes, sir!
Once you guide them to safety, you'll travel over to Gobta to support him. If the timing works out, you'll reach him before the Empire can.
Our force is the swiftest in all of Tempest. I promise you we will make it in time.
Gabiru looked confident enough about it, but realistically speaking, it would be tough. I intended to have the trains running full speed to get the residents evacuated, but moving tens of thousands of people took time, and the Empire had frightening mobility. Based on our calculations, which factored in their Legion magic as well, we predicted that their army could advance a mind-blowing 40 miles in a day. Right now, the Empire was stopped against the border. From there to where they planned to open hostilities, there were around 930 miles of terrain to cover. In about 20 more days, the Imperial force would reach its destination. This dizzying marching pace was possible because each of their soldiers had undergone body enhancement surgery or something like that. This apparently let them stay on the move for a week without food or drink, so their maximum fighting speed was even faster than that. The tanks, meanwhile, could go around 6 or 7 miles an hour without an external supply. And since atmospheric magicules were available day and night, they could take advantage of that to resupply themselves more fully when resting. No point exhausting your force before the war even began, after all. Gadora's guidance along those lines seemed sound enough, so Benimaru and I used his assumptions for our calculations. Benimaru closed that subject.
Thanks to that, the Empire could arrive at this point sooner than we expect. I don't want anyone here to be caught by surprise.
Then he moved right on to the next one.
So this is where the Empire will break out their main army, but as Gobta said, this is mainly a show of force, in other words, a feint. Their real breakout teams are going to move toward here.
He took out some differently colored Empire pegs and spread them around the forest of Jura. Their plan was to make us think the tanks were their main force, then place the brunt of their troops elsewhere. This was all plain as day on our monitors, so I could not say the idea really wowed us. Benimaru said,
Now even if things expand past what we're expecting over here, we still have Geld guarding this terrain. Geld, I want you to call your forces back from their stations as quickly as you can.
Understood. I've already sent the thought communication. All my forces will gather up shortly.
Benimaru and Geld were certainly on the same page. Just a few words and everything was set. I knew I could rely on him. Now Benimaru looked back down at the map.
These forces are likely going to advance through the forest, trying to stay hidden. Unfortunately, Sir Rimuru's Argos monitoring magic can't reveal everything happening under the forest canopy. That's where Soe comes in.
So I nodded and stood up.
The forest is lush with tree cover and difficult to monitor from above. Even if we deploy all our agents, there's too much ground to cover and they run the risk of being found. So we've decided to rely on Moss instead. He's capable of releasing a large number of tiny replications and picking up all the information they take in. None of them can fight very much, but losing a replication won't hurt us at all. Using that, Moss is currently monitoring the eastern forest of Jura. He's informed us that platoons of Imperial troops are on the advance in there, and thanks to his surveillance, we can crush each and every one of them at will.
He accentuated the point with a cruel smile. Kind of scary. Good thing he was on our side. Sure, we could defeat these small platoons all day, but it was the big main force behind them that worried me. Benimaru's strategy for that was to wait until they had gotten themselves assembled to some extent. Benimaru said,
If the Imperial force is trying to reach the dungeon, we'll invite them in and take care of them then. If any remain on the surface, Geld's 2nd Corps and my main force will hit them hard. That's all.
It was a very simple, easy-to-grasp strategy. But really, I was still worried about our size difference. Nobody had commented on that yet, but what did they think about it? Maybe I ought to have brought it up. Before I could, the control center rang out with cries of war. Gobta shouted, All right, if Gabiru's joining my team, we're all gonna be okay. Victory's in the bag for us.
I'm delighted to hear that from you, Sir Gobta, and I promise you that we'll fight the way a winning army should.
I was worried we wouldn't get to join in, but I knew Sir Benimaru would come through. He left us with the greatest honor of all, protecting the homeland. Trust me when I say we'll make full use of our powers.
All 3 of our generals responded to Benimaru's call to arms. Even the non-military folks were excitedly trading feedback with one another. There was not a hint of pessimism. Even the 3 demonesses were happily joining in. But guys, again, the size difference. I mean, yeah, I thought we could win this too. I even felt pretty safe assuming we would. But I was far from anxiety-free, and yet nobody seemed the slightest bit worried. It was weird. Even Gobta was brimming with enthusiasm, his initial concerns now put behind him. He might have had Hakuro as his advisor, but I was still anxious about him. I prompted them all. All right, so is anyone unclear about any part of Benimaru's rundown? No one had any questions. Instead, Benimaru spoke for the group.
Do not worry, Sir Rimuru. We are not at all worried about losing. Not because we don't think we'll lose, but because we'll devote every effort to the fight. We have ample enough reason to win, and we have a glorious battlefield waiting. If we lose, it just proves we were incompetent. We weren't the fittest, so we didn't survive.
He gave me a refreshing smile. All the monsters in the room were exuding the same vibe, including Shuna and the other women. They were not afraid of losing. They were afraid of running from the fight. And more than that, I thought, vaguely at least, I was beginning to understand their feelings. I thought I did, and I decided to do what I could for them. I called out, Testarossa, Ultima, Carrera. The 3 demonesses immediately reacted together. Yes, sir. I had an order for them. Each of you will accompany an army corps and support their operations. Testarossa replied, Absolutely, Sir Rimuru. I have Siang taking care of the council, so until this war is over, I will gladly participate. Ultima sounded thrilled. Finally, I'm seeing some action. You're in good hands, Sir Rimuru. Carrera gave a wicked little laugh. You can expect great things from me, Master. Time to show off every ounce of my powers. The 3 of them looked up at me, beaming. I nodded back and gave out my assignments. I told Testarossa, you'll join Gobta. Testarossa smiled, gladly. Gobta looked significantly less convinced. You sure about that? This girl's never even fought before. Can she keep up with the First Corps? Sheesh, that was a pretty bold statement to make around her. I mean, I did not know these girls were primals until just recently, so I was not one to talk. But Gobta's sheer courage just floored me. She's gonna kill you, I thought. But I kept my mouth shut. After all, would it not be more fun this way? Testarossa said with a smile, I'm glad to be of such help. I knew I was not the only one who could not look her in the eye right then. Do not worry, Gobta. I am pretty sure she will accept an apology. I could not wait for Gobta to find out who she really was, though. By those standards, Gabiru had matured a lot. He bowed his head to Ultima.
I look forward to your support. I still have so many improvements to make.
According to Diablo and my other sources, Ultima was the most brutal of the 3 demonesses. Carrera was the most likely to go out of control, but Ultima was still the scariest. I could already picture her following my orders, but still keeping an eye on the side paths for some Imperial soldiers to torture. Gabiru dealt with her correctly, at least. She seemed to like him a lot, chirping, "Okay, I'm looking forward to it too," in her cute voice. I knew Gabiru had been working hard on his habit of getting carried away, and now I would say it had just saved his life. A little daily effort can accomplish so many things. Geld, meanwhile, had no problem shaking hands with Carrera. They both had a kind of noble warrior aura to them. I have to say, I did a pretty exquisite job with these pairings. If Gobta and Gabiru had switched places, I think Gobta would have been in mortal danger. So I patted myself on the back as I gave them all a little pep talk. Nobody really knew who these demonesses were. I put a gag order on everyone who attended the meeting Guy crashed. No point terrorizing everyone for no good reason. I also told the trio to keep mum about it and take orders from the generals so they would not reveal themselves, but I was so sure they would mess it up. It really scared me. I wished I did not have to know the truth about them. But let us trust them. Unless I told them to, I was sure Testarossa and her friends would lie low. Either way, we had these 3 pairs in place, and with the demonesses accompanying our corps, I was sure they could deal with any emergencies. That at least relieved me a bit. I asked the room, that settles that topic. Anything further to add? The rest would depend on the Empire's moves, so they would just have to play it by ear after that. It would be important to work alongside King Gazel, so we would need to hold detailed talks about that. but that was a strategic headquarters job. Our generals had their own orders already, so if that was all, I was ready to adjourn. But one person raised his hand up high. Masayuki asked, could I say something? I turned to him. What's up, Masayuki? He fumbled for the words. Well, I just had a question. I said, Masayuki asked, ignoring the question of why I'm a general for the moment. The volunteer army you gave me, I don't think anyone said what its role would be or anything, but, that. Yeah, I was sure he had a few questions. Taking a high school-age kid and calling him a general would confuse anyone. Maybe you would see officers his age back in the samurai era, but I did not think a kid who grew up during peacetime in Japan could keep up with it. But, it was hard for me too. I turned around one day and boom, I was a demon lord. I did not have any helpful boss giving me a shoulder to lean on either. Along those lines, I would say Masayuki was pretty lucky actually. Without thinking, I asked him, "Don't you think so?" Masayuki sounded completely lost. "Don't I think so? What? Can you please give me some guidance?" Oh, right. Thinking all this would not get it across to him. It would probably sound like a bunch of excuses to him, but oh well. I told him, I felt kind of bad about pushing a huge amount of responsibility on you at once. Masayuki tried to object. No, if we were all monsters here, a war breaking out would not be an issue at all. Their morale would be 100% and nobody would cause any trouble. Not so with our new residents. They would be scared, anxious, disturbed, and some might even turn to crime. I said, so it's at a time like this when I want you to exercise your powers and ease everybody's anxieties. Masayuki seemed to understand well enough. I see. I think I can help you with that. Then Myomiel's eyes sparkled as he pleaded with Masayuki.
No need for modesty, Sir Masayuki. As a hero, everybody knows, to say nothing of myself, that you'd hesitate to take the side of a single nation. But I hope you'll still lend a hand to assist the powerless, the helpless among our citizenry.
He was still misreading the kid's actual powers, but I did not see any need to correct him. In fact, I had a sneaking suspicion that Hinata had the wrong idea about him too. What a bad dude, I thought as I watched the legend of Masayuki unfold before me. Masayuki did not look too thrilled. In fact, I would say he was pretty disgusted with the whole thing. I felt bad for him, but I really wanted him to pitch in. He asked, slowly accepting the situation. So I guess my volunteer army will maintain public order? I answered, perfect. As you know, Ramirez will ensure that the damage to our town will be kept to a minimum. When war breaks out, you see, the capital on the surface is going to be quarantined inside the Labyrinth. I had told my cabinet about this already, along with other involved parties. I was not keeping a tight cap on it, so I was sure the stragglers from our evacuation drills were spreading rumors about it. That was on purpose. I figured it would help assuage people's fears a little more. Ramirez jumped in.
That's right! I'm a pretty powerful fairy, but that's all thanks to my master.
Indeed. I have lent a portion of my ponderous magicule force to Ramirez, allowing her to engineer this gargantuan feat. Call it a victory driven by friendship, if you will.
It was Ramirez who did the required legwork to stuff the city inside the Labyrinth, but it could not be powered at all without Veldora. I had to honestly thank him for that. I told them, thanks you two, it's a huge help.
Oh, is it? Aw, it's no biggie, none at all. You can compliment me more if you like, though.
That's right. Sing our praises to the high heavens.
I gave them the sort of thank you they were fishing for. Yay, thank you very much. A couple compliments and look at them go. But they really did deserve it. And even when the city was sequestered in the dungeon, the citizens would still see the sky above. A lot of them would not even realize anything was different. The Empire would not bring any of its violence to town, and really, I was still astounded by it. Then Veldora warned me.
But you need to remember, Rimuru.
I asked, Ramirez continued the warning.
This isn't too likely to happen, but if my master was somehow defeated and the Empire makes it through the 100th floor, that's going to eject the town back up to the surface, kind of the rebound from expending all that effort,
I answered. That's another concern, huh? But that's based on the assumption that Veldora's gonna lose, isn't it? If it comes to that, I think the town's gonna be the least of our worries. If it did, all of us would be fully devoted to the fight. We would not have the leeway to worry about what happened to the city, I was sure. Veldora boasted.
Not that I'd ever lose, of course.
Mm-hmm. We got the 10 dungeon marvels on the case too, so I think we're gonna be just peachy.
Ramirez was right, certainly. I did not think Veldora would be playing much of a role. But if worst came to worst... I said, there's always Masayuki too. Masayuki panicked immediately. Huh? Wait a minute, please. Peacekeeping is one thing, but what could I ever do if it came to that? We all nodded at Masayuki as he whined about never even leading an army before. Even Mule, as much as he worshipped the guy, could understand. I assured him, don't worry, Masayuki. I don't expect you to lead an entire military force. I'm still discussing this with Hinata, but I'm asking her to send an aide from the Crusaders. I'm sure she'll say yes, so you're gonna have an assistant helping you out pretty soon. Masayuki brightened a little. Oh, you will? Well, that's a relief. I added, and also, I'll have the kids serve as your bodyguards so they'll keep you safe. I mean you keep them safe, all right? Mule roared with approval.
Imagine being defended by the hero himself. Those children couldn't possibly be safer.
Masayuki nodded, even as a bead of sweat ran down his temple. Of course. He knew what the kids were capable of, so he understood who was going to be defending whom well enough. Plus, they would have Chloe around, and I was sure she could keep them all alive if things got really hairy. So that was everything we needed to talk about. We were fully prepared, but until the end came, there was no telling what could happen. Besides, well, it was not like I did not have any concerns. Chloe, after all, had pretty vivid memories of my grisly death. At least one person in the Empire had the power to kill me. That was an undeniable fact. If they came for me, not even the 10 dungeon marvels could stop them. In fact, Raphael answered inside my mind.
Report. The 10 dungeon marvels were put in place precisely for that reason, to reveal the scope of the enemy's powers.
That was what I thought. At the end of the day, Raphael always put my own safety first, I guess. I appreciated it, but at the same time, I had to brace myself. I had to protect my friends no matter what. I did not want any of them hurt thanks to something as ridiculous as a war. And with that resolve in my heart, I ended the day's meeting. Masayuki did a good job addressing the populace, it looked like. Apparently, it turned into an eyebrow beat the Demon Lord into swearing he would defend the city kind of premise. Tempest's adventurers and immigrants cheered him on. The hero does it again! What a role model! There he was, looking conflicted with himself as he basked in the adulation. But even his expression got misconstrued. My, doesn't the hero look so attractive when he's scowling? After all the promises he extracted from the Demon Lord, the hero's still not satisfied yet. Indeed, such a modest, reserved leader. The hero's going to protect this town. Between the Demon Lord Rimuru and him, I'm not scared one bit of the Empire's attack. Yeah, just leave it to them and they'll take care of everything. That sort of interpretation. Now Masayuki's reputation was better than ever, his mental suffering going completely unnoticed by anyone else. And so, as the populace went on with their normal lives, the moment finally came. The Empire made its debut, and our days of peace reached an end. There, on a hot summer night, war began like a sudden dream.
Route confirmed. The next episode and full playlist are ready.
Then don't stop here. Keep watching in story order and subscribe before the next part drops.